Oh my, so much to talk about in so little time. Folks, I've had a hard time deciding what topic I want to address today, and I've narrowed it down to I want to talk about the EU haters and their arguments that they give. And one of the ones that's the most aggravating is when they say, George Lucas never cared about canon. He didn't like the EU. It was never canon. He never considered it canon. That's my impersonation of them talking. Anyway, actually, we never argued the point that he never considered it canon because we all know about the hierarchy of canon, or at least us hardcore fans remember that. And George Lucas had G Canon, which was his canon, and then all the other books that followed through. But you know what? The EU universe was more than just a hierarchy of canon. It was a lot more than that, according to sources. I'm going to pull up here in a minute, but first off, let's go to the first thing. They said, well, George Lucas never cared about it. He never even read it. You know, they cherry-picked that Star-Lord quote that's on Wikipedia. Yet, it's funny how they cherry-picked that one, yet they ignore what Leland Shee says right underneath it. He says that the quote that they provide makes it sound like the EU is separate from George's vision of Star Wars universe. It is not. It is not. The EU must follow certain tenets met by George through the films and other guidelines that he provides outside of the films. So it looks like that George Lucas actually cares a little bit more than the EU than what most casual fans think. And other quotes that they have here, I'm going to actually go to the Star Wars Insider number 23. I actually have the Star Wars Insider number 23. Where it talks about that quote, gospel or canon, as we refer to it, includes the screenplays, films. You can read the rest on Wikipedia. Let me read you what they don't print from that Star Wars Insider magazine. Here's the next one. They said when they're talking about about this all this material coming out, the complexity of it. How do you keep up with it all? They said a great deal of attention and care has been put in to fleshing out the Star Wars universe because fans are sophisticated. Oh, thank you. And demand a cohesive approach. We do. Expanded universe fans want cohesiveness. And it says Star Wars universe is unique. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, from me. It says, and each story builds upon the last and leads into the next. So a great deal is being cared about. This is in the early days. This is 1994. So it's being cared about a lot. Well, that's very refreshing. I'm really glad they told us that. But hey, what about that Star Wars Gamer 6? I have that one too. So, let's see. Canon refers to an authoritative list of books that Lucas licensing editors consider to be an authentic part. What? Authentic? What does authentic mean to you? Genuine, real. An authentic part of the official Star Wars history. Did it just say official? So wait, we're not G Canon, but we are authentic. That's the expanded universe. And the expanded universe is also official Star Wars history. And see, people get so upset. It was never considered canon. It was never considered canon. Well, maybe not George Lucas's canon, but it was considered authentic and official as the Star Wars history. And see, this is what we were told. This is why we get upset when they threw away the EU. And most casual fans just don't understand the EU. That's why they don't understand why we're upset about it. They're like, well, it was never canon. No, but we were told official, we were told authentic, and it was all in continuity. Remember, continuity is a big deal here. Now, the other thing they talk about is, well, George Lucas really had nothing to do with the expanded universe. He really didn't do anything. Well, that's another lie. He had a lot to do with it. He actually talked one-on-one with James Luceno when he was making Labyrinth of Evil and gave him some pointers about what happens in the movie and what he should kind of do. In fact, George Lucas in an interview also stated that when they asked him, well, how did Anakin get a scar? He said, I don't know, that's for the books to decide. I let them do that. See, George had his own world, right, the films, and then he had the EU fill in the gaps for him. It was cohesive, just like they say here. It was all knit together. George Lucas and the EU walked hand in hand and had a beautiful continuity. In fact, what other things did he do? Well, he also instructed He had a big deal in Shadows of the Empire. He had a lot of input into Shadows of the Empire about what was what, princes are. He actually said that, what was it? Oh, that if he loved that book so much that if he could, he'd have gone back and made a movie out of it. That is a direct quote from George Lucas. He loved Shadows of the Empire. Also, he invented Darth Bane. Did you know that? George Lucas created Darth Bane, an EU expanded universe character. Okay? He also called Darth Plagueis a Mun. So that's how the books went forward with Darth Plagueis, alien species. He kind of wrote the prologue to an EU book called Shatterpoint by Matthew Stover. That's kind of a big deal, right? He's actually writing fiction in the expanded universe too. Also, Kevin J. Anderson tells many stories of where he taught with George when he was doing the Jedi Academy trilogy. Remember, George loved the double-bladed lightsaber idea so much that he put it in Phantom Menace for Darth Maul. He also helped him out with the Tales of the Jedi, kind of give him a history of the Jedi. Something that he repeated over with Terry Brooks. When Terry Brooks was writing Phantom Menace, he said, okay, here's some of the history of the Jedi. Also remember that Timothy Zahn, I've mentioned this before, had George Lucas give him all the West End game books, said, hey, read this is some great stuff. George Lucas loved a lot of the ideas from West End games. He also helped out John Ostrander from Star Wars Republic, kind of gave him some guidelines about how he should direct his characters. He had a deep influence in The Force Unleashed video game, good story points, what needed to be done. He gave a lot of helpful input there. He placed a lot of restrictions on a lot of the authors. There were some things they could and could not talk about. For instance, the first meeting of Chewbacca and Han has roughly been skipped over in the expanded universe because George wanted to save that story maybe for another day. Also, Yoda's history and species origin is totally off the books. No one knows why, but he didn't know if he was going to use that origin, I guess, in the prequels. But anyway, there's a lot of other rules that George Lucas had for the authors, what they could and couldn't do. They had to get permission from George Lucas before they could get that idea. In fact, some books were canceled because George did not like the path it was going on. Someone came up with an origin of the Sith. Hey, can we do this? He said, no, that is not the origin. Give me something like this. And so they created the origin of the Sith according to George Lucas. My favorite story comes from one of the great authors, Troy Denning. And when they were writing Star by Star, well, and actually before that, excuse me, when they were all getting together, all the great minds, Stackpole, Alston, and of course, what's his name, Salvatore, were all getting together about the story arc for New Jedi Order. They knew they had to kill someone off at the very beginning to make it real for the fans. Now, they wanted to kill off Luke Skywalker, and they asked George if that was okay. George said, absolutely not. You can kill off Han Solo. Let me repeat that. He was going to let them kill off Han Solo, and the authors went, maybe someone else. How about Chewbacca? He went, all right, Chewbacca. So they killed off Chewbacca. You think that was the author's idea? Bob Salvatore says, man, I get hated on for killing Chewbacca. He said, but you got to be honest, it wasn't my call. It came from George. Actually, he wanted Han Solo. We doubled back and said, well, how about Chewie? And so they made Chewie, the one that got death. Sorry, spoilers if you don't know the expanded universe. However, that was George's call. Everyone thinks, yeah, I can't believe they killed off Chewie. Why would they do that? Well, because George Lucas gave him the thumbs up. That's why they did it. George Lucas had a lot of invested interest in the expanded universe. All these are facts. You can go look them up. If you have the magazines, if you have the knowledge, go out there, look out. All I'm saying is fact. George Lucas cared about it. It may have been in the hierarchy of canon, but it is called authentic. It is called official. Folks, that's it for this week. Stay tuned for next week. I'm going to try to post a little bit earlier, and it's going to be a good one. Talk to you later.